Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention. A kingdom for a stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene. Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars, and at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, sword, and fire all crouch for employment. But, pardon, gentles all, the flat, unraised spirits that have dared on this unworthy scaffold to bring forth so great an object. Can this cockpit hold the vasty fields of France? Or may we cram within this wooden O the very casks that did affright the air at Agincourt? Oh, pardon. Since a crooked figure may attest in little place a million. And let us, ciphers to this great account on your imaginary forces work. Suppose, within the girdle of these walls are now confined two mighty monarchies, whose high, upreared, and abutting fronts the perilous narrow ocean parts asunder. Piece out our imperfections with your thoughts. Into 1,000 parts divide one man, and make imaginary puissance. For 'tis your thoughts that now must deck our kings, carry them here and there, jumping o'er times, turning the accomplishment of many years into an hourglass, for the which supply, admit me, chorus to this history, who, prologue-like, your humble patience pray, gently to hear, kindly to judge our play. Good morning. So yeah, I just Shakespeared at you. So I'm Stevie Ray, Dallimore. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here. I just want to say thank you to Cody and Whiteboard and Creative Mornings, Chattanooga and Global Creative Mornings. What an amazing thing that we get together to do this, to, talk about being creative and doing creative things. It's a pretty awesome thing. So I'm really, really honored to be a part of this. So thank you very much for having me this morning. I'm going to tell you kind of about my journey to how I ended up here. And maybe you're kind of wondering what the hell that had to do with all this other stuff. But it will make sense, I hope, at some point. So I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah. I was raised there. And in college, I went into theater, and that's where I started. I went to an actor training program at the University of Utah. And I took a year off to go live in Los Angeles. Took a year off of college to go move there, kind of for a girl, kind of for playing music, kind of for acting, but none of it was really for me, so I kind of got my ass handed to me in LA. And I put my tail between my legs and I came back to the University of Utah to finish my degree. And actually, as it turns out, it was probably one of the best things that could have happened, because while I was in my final 2 years of college, I had an amazing experience, an amazing opportunity. A man from the National Theatre of Great Britain came to direct Macbeth, and it was the first time I got to play a leading role. So I got to play Macbeth, which was pretty badass. And then I got invited to go to the Shakespeare Theatre in Washington, D.C. We're live. Do you want me to do this? You want me to speak out this way or through the mic? What do you all? Speak out. Speak out? Yeah. All right, thank you. Got to use that training, as much as I can. So, I got the opportunity to go be an intern at the Shakespeare Theatre in Washington, D.C. Actually, I also got my first job out of this thing. I got to go to the Wisconsin Shakespeare Festival, and I spent a season with them, and then I spent 2 seasons in DC with the Shakespeare Theater, basically holding a spear and understudying all the roles. And the other thing that was kind of fun about that was I was part of what was called the Young Company, and we would do like an hour-long version of a Shakespeare play and take it around to the various DC schools. So we did like a Romeo and Juliet that was just, really condensed. And we would get up at really early, like 6 in the morning. We'd go to these schools, we'd set up our little set, do our play for the school, have a talk back, go back to the theater and rehearse, like, say, Troilus and Cressida. I know, everybody's familiar, right? And then at night, we would do Hamlet. So these were very full days of Shakespeare all the time. But it was an amazing experience for me. From that, and I also did a couple of plays. That's where my professional career as an actor sort of began. So I got the opportunity to do a couple of plays in DC. And then I got an agent in New York. So I went to New York and started working. I got to tour the country with a company called The Acting Company. And that's where I met my ex-wife, and, who is from here, which is eventually how you'll learn I get here. But anyway, so I got to tour the country with The Acting Company. And then, excuse me, I moved to New York City, and I was really lucky right away, and I got to understudy in a Broadway show and then take it over. So I was in a Tony-winning, a Broadway show, kind of like my first year in New York. It was an amazing kind of, hello, welcome. It was great. So I started working as an actor mostly in New York City. Of course, I had to side hustle and do all kinds of things to scrap by and survive all the things that we do as creatives, right? So then we had kids and then moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee, which was an interesting conversation with my agents. As you can imagine, I'm in New York saying, so I got this crazy idea. How about Chattanooga? Yeah. And actually, they were amazing about it. They said, wow, that's a cool idea because we're opening an office in Atlanta. And so, because I don't know how many of you are familiar, but the film industry now is huge. It's huge in Atlanta. And so my New York agents opened an office in Atlanta. So, I was doing, in New York, I was able to do, a lot of theater mostly, but I started doing some film, some TV, commercials. I did Broadway, I did off-Broadway, I did off-Broadway, I did off-Broadway. I did video games. I did pretty much everything you could do as an actor, except porn. I didn't do porn. I mean, times might get rough, who knows? But anyway, so then we moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I was able to kind of cobble together. When I first moved here, I waited tables. I came here and I started waiting tables, trying to be an actor, and that was good. It was sort of working-ish. But it's hard, to do that while you're trying to make a life here and stuff. So I started doing some teaching and adjuncting around. So I adjuncted at Baylor and I adjuncted at UTC and Southern Adventist for one theater class, and then got offered to take over the theater department at Macaulay School. So now I am the director of theater at Macaulay. I'm also, I teach filmmaking and I teach theater. And I also teach writing, screenwriting and playwriting, and freshman English now, which is an adventure. I just started last year, so, God help me. No, but it's going great. So that's pretty much more or less how I got here. I've lived in some big cities. I've been able to do some cool things. I'm really, really, really lucky, and I'm very thankful for that opportunities, that I've had along the way. So let me dial it back for a second here now. And when I was in New York, I had, some kind of light bulb dawning epiphany something. And it was an amazing experience. So I got invited to go see this show. And this show was taking place, let's say it was on like a, I don't know, Wednesday evening. It was on 42nd Street. It was in, this is like 11th Avenue, way over on the west side of 42nd Street. And it was like this restaurant bar. And downstairs, they had kind of a little sort of mini performance space in it. It was just a tiny little kind of bar stage situation. And I went down there and I'm looking around and I'm surrounded by like some of, the best actors in New York City. Like these Broadway luminaries are hanging out there. These like really, really, you see them on TV, you see them on stage. Or just like, I'm like, wow, this is cool. What's going on here? And then I'm also happened to be surrounded by little people. These are all like 10, 11, and 12-year-old kids. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Then I sit down and I go, okay, I'm gonna watch this show. And this little girl sits up in this chair on this mini stage, and these actors get up and they're holding scripts. This is just a reading. Well, it turns out the little girl wrote the play. 10-year-old girl from Hell's Kitchen wrote this play that these Broadway stars are performing for me in this really intimate setting. I mean, even smaller than this, like, tiny little space. And I went, what? This is amazing. They proceeded to do, 8 or 9 or maybe even 10 kids' plays. And I don't think I've laughed or cried so hard ever in one sitting in the theater. It was truly a moving experience. To watch these adults take these kids' words so seriously, to give to it, to really sort of give back of their creative energy, to this thing. So I found out about this project. It's called the 52nd Street Project in New York City. I don't know if anybody's familiar. They've been around now for about 30 years. And I decided I wanted some of that. So I went and started volunteering with them, first as an actor. So my first experience with one of these is actually kind of fun. So this kid, George, he's 10. I think his family comes from the DR. He's rough with English, but pretty solid with English overall. He interviews me. He's a 10-year-old kid. He interviews me, and he interviews the other guy who's going to be this. There's sort of 2 character plays, more or less. And he interviews the both of us, asks me all kinds of weird questions, like, do you like hamburgers? Do you smoke? Do you play an instrument? What kind of, do you like, I don't remember who was popular at the time, but some kind of musical somebody that I'm like, sure, I like them. I don't know who they are. So then he goes away and he writes this play. He writes this short play, and I get to act in it. Well, I'm a kangaroo. I play a kangaroo, and my best friend is a horse, and we think it was called Friends or something like that, or maybe even Best Friends, but we fought all the time. It literally said they fight, and so here's me, the kangaroo, and here's him, the horse, like just fighting away in this play. And then, of course, as a good play does, we go to Jamaica and we sing a song and make up, and we're friends. At the time I was playing a lot of banjo then, so I played the banjo. I was a banjo playing kangaroo, and my friend was a guitar playing kangaroo, and he happened to be a musician as well as an actor, and so we actually ended up composing the music for this kid's. He also wrote a song in there, so we composed the music to it, and did the whole play and all that. So. It's one of those things. It's kind of a no-brainer. It's like, oh yeah, that's good. That's just good for your soul. So now fast forward. I spent a significant amount of time learning what they did. I started mentoring in their classes. and learning about the process and about how they, how they teach playwriting to these little kids and stuff. And their program has grown tremendously. It's huge now. They have all kinds of stuff: photo making, film making, stage combat making, dance making. They have scholarships for kids. It's an incredible thing. So, but when I moved here, I thought, you know what? What a cool thing. Why don't we start something like that here in Chattanooga? So we started the Muse of Fire project. My visuals went away. I don't know if anybody noticed, but it did say, "Oh, for a Muse of Fire" in that opening. So it does bring us back full circle. I love the chorus speech from Henry V. Does anybody know Henry V at all? Okay. Well, that's, the speech I did earlier today. And the reason for that is because it starts, the whole thing, the whole setup of this play is, hey, I just want some inspiration here. I want some help, but I want you to help me. I want to bring this thing onto stage that's so much bigger than us. How do I do that? How do I put a war up here? How do I fit all this crazy madness on stage? The only way I can think of it is for you, the audience, to invest your imaginations as well. For all of us to create together. So the audience has to bring something to it. It's not just a passive thing, right? So this inspiration, and I love that it's one of my favorite, and I didn't even realize this actually until I was thinking about this speech, or this, talk. The Muse of Fire is pretty interesting because here we are talking about a warrior king, right? Henry V, greatly outnumbered. I mean, I don't know how legal his actions were or anything like that, but still, he goes in and he kind of takes over France, right? But against all odds, I mean, crazy odds, like 1 to 500, 1 against 500. But he's a warrior king, so the Muse of Fire sort of makes sense for someone who's a battler, who's a warrior, who goes into battle. And I started thinking, wow, that's kind of cool, because what we are, and what I challenge us all to be today, is creative warriors. I think it's actually more important than maybe we even realize what we do. We should not take for granted, and I'm not going to get all preachy, but I am a little bit. We should not take for granted that we are given these gifts. We should be able to share these gifts and do good stuff for people out there. Being creative is a gift, right? I mean, does anybody agree? It's an amazing thing that we get to do this. We get to do this. How cool is that? And then how do we share that? How do we make a positive, impact on other people with what we do? I feel like that's, when I come back to all of it, I've always wondered about why I'm an actor. It's a very self-serving thing, actually. And I've always been uncomfortable with that. Not that that's wrong necessarily, not that actors are wrong, just that, what do I do it for? It's great, it's entertainment, and there's stuff, and there is a gift, there is something that you need I need to honor in it, but I also feel like that's not enough, at least not for me. I feel like it's really important to teach, to give back, to, inspire, to pull something out of somebody else who didn't know they had it. It is sort of like that speech, work with me here. Bring yourself halfway and I'll bring myself halfway and we'll create something amazing. That's all I got.